Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another Chris EV Road Trips. Tonight, we've got the two Ians back again. Ian Bennett, how are you going tonight? How's the weather in good old Queensland?
Cold.
Cold? Jeez.
Yeah, it was last night it was down to 15 degrees.
Oh, the 15. My God, you must have had the woolly pajamas out.
Yeah, well, we had to put the idea down on.
Yeah. And Ian Ogilvy from Infinite Planet here in the lovely warm part of Sydney. How are you going?
It's still pretty cold everywhere, I think, at the moment. What happened to global warming? Isn't it supposed to fix this problem?
No, it's a left-wing conspiracy.
Anyway, we won't go there. But where we will go is we're going to go straight into some electric vehicle news. And who's dropping the prices lately? It is the surprise of the night, and it is Tesla. Ian, what's going on here? Tesla Model 3. What have we got? What's the new price of that? 54.9, is it? Can't see. It's 54,900 for the base Model 3 now in Australia. Is that correct?
So yeah, it looks like it. Yeah. And
so,
and the Y is 55.9.
Yeah, so that's going to upset the EV fraternity because Tesla's a top-selling car. And
what about
that's
the
a Model Y 55, is it?
Yeah, and the Model 3 is 54.
So there's
only 1,000 extra to go to a Model Y.
Yep.
$1,000 difference.
Yeah, well, can't you see it? It says 54.
Wow. I know, but it never used to be $1,000 difference. It was a huge difference. It was like 5,000 or 6,000. Now it's down to 1,000. That's.
But you're paying almost 30,000 more to move from the rear-wheel drive to the performance.
Yeah, but the performance is a spectacular car.
Yes.
I mean, it's.
But even the long range, you're moving to 70,000 for, which is a big jump.
Mm. So if anybody's in the market for electric vehicle, I'd highly recommend they check out Tesla because.
Yeah, but you're talking about the Renault and Nissan Leaf.
Yeah, they were sort of run-out models, but there have been other short supply vehicles which have dropped $20,000. I know the Peugeot model went from 60 down to 40, and this.
Yeah, so I thought the question tonight was going to be a hybrid's going to take over from ICE cars, or a hybrid's going to take over from electric cars.
Yeah, well, we don't know now with all these price drops, but we certainly. So yeah, going on to tonight's topic is going to be. So we're seeing a lot of hybrid models entering the market. It seems that every car. Oh, I'm exaggerating a bit, I guess, but a lot of car models now are coming out with a hybrid version, and that's SUVs and also sedan normal cars as well. But so my question is hybrids going to be the future of the internal combustion engine car? Because I'm starting to see that every model now has a hybrid version. So Ian Ogilvy, what do you think is happening with the car market at the moment with all these hybrids coming onto the scene?
Well, overall, I think the picture is that they've got the technology and the way of building them to a point now where you can actually build a hybrid for a lower price potentially than a regular ICE. To not include anything hybrid at all, you're actually potentially increasing the price. And to go to a plug-in hybrid, they've now also got to the point where the plug-in hybrid costs no more than the regular hybrid to build. Depending on or do it in volume.
And while you're on cost, is a EV cheaper or dearer than a hybrid to build?
Well, it does largely depend on battery prices, but all things being equal, the simplest vehicle of the lot is the EV. So as battery prices continue to come down, eventually the EV should become the least expensive of the lot, provided the trend with battery prices is not at its end already, and there's no evidence that it's stopped.
I have a question. Do the sale prices of the EVs, hybrids, and the ICE cars reflect the cost?
Well, part that factors into it is what they call the Wright's law, which is sort of a bit like Moore's law. The more you've built of something, the lower the price gets. And we've been building ICE cars for over 100 years, so the price is really low. Toyota builds 10 million cars a year, and roughly, I think last year, about 3 million of those were hybrids. So it's still 3 to 1 in the volume that they're making. So even though the hybrid can be inherently no more expensive, they can also still get this, the new technology commands a premium. When you first introduce a new technology and it's in that lower volume, you find a way to justify getting more until you get the volume up.
So EVs are dearer. Are they dearer because they cost more, or are they dearer because they've got bigger margin?
It depends on the EV. At the low end of the market, China's proven that in the lowest models with the smaller batteries, the EV can be even cheaper than the ICE. If you look at the prices in China, you've got EVs that are cheaper than any petrol car.
Mm.
But as the battery size goes up, the comparative price goes up. But if you look at BMW models or Mercedes models, very often the same equivalent car is the same price with ICE or petrol.
That's the sale price, but what I'm getting at, what I'm asking the question is the cost. Is the cost indicative of the sale price?
It's hard to compare apples for apples. You can get, like for the Tesla, if you want the same performance as a Tesla, can you get an ICE car as cheap? But then it tends to be compared with ICE cars that don't have the same power, and then they can be cheaper. So, it's hard to get apples for apples. But apples for apples, they're getting to be about the same now. I think they're about the same in build costs and quite similar in sale cost. Well, and if they're similar in sale cost, given the lower volume of EVs, obviously the EVs are already costing less, really, when you think about it.
Yeah, because I think a big component of EVs, full EV, is the price of the battery. And as battery prices drop, we can expect the car price to drop. So that's going to happen this year, so they say.
Yeah.
So,
and it turns out that overall, the most complex vehicle of the lot to build ends up being the ICE car.
Also, motors, the motors are getting cheaper and cheaper because they're basically just one big magnet with a lot of copper on them.
Yeah, they're electric motors are extremely cheap, but they're not the full equivalent of an ICE engine, because an ICE engine produces the power, whereas an electric motor handles the kilowatts going in and turns those kilowatts into movement. But something else has to provide the kilowatts. So it's it offsets the cost of the battery, which does some of the job of the ICE engine, in fact.
Well, you could say the other thing. You could say the ICE engine without the petrol does nothing.
True, without the petrol does nothing, but it turns the chemicals into the energy, whereas the battery turns the chemicals into the energy. So the battery has a kilowatt output. The battery outputs kilowatts.
Yeah, I have to stop you there because I'm going to go on to the next question.
Yeah.
So tonight's discussion is whether hybrids are going to be a rising in their car sales. So, Ian Bennett, can you briefly explain how a hybrid works and why are we seeing so many cars starting to come out as hybrids?
So I think the best person to ask that question would be Ian Ogilvy, because he knows everything, don't you, Ian?
That's right. We better ask
the
Ian.
engineering side maybe is my forte, but I certainly don't know everything.
So I know you've done plenty of research on this topic. So what's your take on it?
Well, a good starting point is there's a video, and it's got a picture that, hold on, I'll share screen.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
So there's an explanation here that's done by a professor at a university explaining how all the details of the Toyota hybrid, but very simply just looking at the diagram, you've got the main power electric motor, which sends the power to this big wheel here, which is which drives the differential in the wheels. And you've got a second electric motor. So the main electric motor provides the main drive to the vehicle and also does the regen braking. And then this second electric motor does the starter motor, effectively the gearbox, and the generator for the high voltage battery when it's driven by the main motor. And all of that is done just by this motor and this little mechanism underneath it. And that replaces the gearbox and everything else. And if you look at a ICE car, it's still got two electric motors effectively, or two wound things that work like electric motors in an alternator and a starter motor. And because they're low voltage, they end up using just as much copper as the electric motors in the hybrids. So you've got the same number of electric motor type components, and you've almost eliminated the gearbox.
So what you're telling me, the reason why manufacturers are keen on hybrids is because they don't have to put a gearbox in a car. Is that one way to put it?
That's one way to put it. You've saved a quite expensive component in the gearbox. I've got...
Yeah, because now most hybrids have the single speed gearbox, which is just the one, and a reduction gear, I think.
Yeah, so we've got this diagram here of that part that's under that electric motor that does the job of the gearbox, as well as the starter motor, as well as the generator. And you've got, if you look to the diagram to the right where they're not spinning, you've got an outside ring that goes to the drive of the car, an inside shaft that comes from the combustion engine that spins with the combustion engine, and this planetary ring, which is seen rotating on the right here, which controls what happens and is driven by that electric motor. So if you look at the diagram at the left at the moment, the shaft from the combustion engine is spinning, and that's spinning the the planetary ring drive, which is connected to that motor. So in that mode, it's generating electricity. Mm-hmm. And the car is not moving because the outer ring is not moving.
I see.
And as you change the ratio of the planetary drive going around, if you were to just stop the planetary drive from spinning and have it track what happens on the outside ring drive, then the yellow shaft would be turning the whole thing and thus driving the car. So all you have to do to start driving the car with the combustion engine is change what's happening with that ring.
I see.
And if the car was stopped, you just drive that ring and it'll spin the shaft in the middle and start the combustion engine. So just by controlling the speed of that ring from the motor, you can do everything from generate electricity, transfer the drive from the combustion engine into the ring, and even change the gear ratio. The speed at which the ring is spinning changes from that setting there of doing the drive of the engine doing nothing to propel the car, to you start spinning that ring and the drive translates into driving the car. And at whatever speed you want, you can control the speed that it drives the car by controlling that ring. So you end up with no more components, and in fact less components with the hybrid than you end up with the combustion engine.
But a lot more than an electric.
Do all that work.
A lot more though than an electric vehicle.
It's still a lot more than an electric vehicle. In electric vehicle, that whole ring mechanism and the combustion engine is all gone.
Yeah. And that's why I believe that EVs in the long term are going to be a lot less expensive to build than any of these so-called simple things.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's partly this whole thing of that Wright's law that as the volume goes up, the cost comes down.
Well,
Almost everything building a lot more. Sorry, you're going to say?
But also the Gold Coast law, which is the less things you've got to put into something, the cheaper it is.
Yeah, that's right. But even when you're putting less in, when you're new at it, you don't reap those benefits yet. So, almost every manufacturer is making way more ICE cars and have been making ICE cars for ages and have perfected it, and they're new at making EVs. So the EVs started off really expensive, but the price keeps coming down as the volume goes up. And Toyota makes 3 times as many non-hybrids as hybrids, but the hybrid cost is going down and the ratio of hybrids is going up.
So the other question would be, is price driving the market to EVs or hybrids or ICE? So is the price one of the things, or do people just feel, because anecdotally I get people say to me, well, I'd like an electric car, but it's not game enough yet. I might just go for a hybrid. Actually, someone once said to me, really dead straight face, I'm not sure, I don't like EVs. It's a bit dangerous with that battery. I'd rather a hybrid. And I said, what, you'd rather the battery next to the petrol tank? True.
Yeah.
I think it's more to do with the way people think, and I think there's a lot of people who are scared to get a battery car or to rely on a battery car, because I think once the battery's dead, they're finished. They won't be able to go and get petrol and fill it up and drive again. So that's my understanding why people are reluctant to change. But humans,
there's confidence thing, there's fear factor with there's a big campaign on the fear of fires.
I think the biggest turn off for people in electric cars is they think the battery in a couple of years' time is going to be useless. It's not going to work, and they have to spend $20,000 on a new battery. And that's what I hear all the time. When you say to them, well, let's go to YouTube, and it just doesn't happen. But there is a big fear that the biggest part of the cost of an EV is the battery, and when it fails, then I'm going to be up for $20,000, $25,000, $30,000 for a new one.
So in the end, we've got a whole bunch of factors against an electric vehicle that all come down to the fact they're new. They're new, which makes the price higher. They're new, which means people are scared of how things work. And they're new with people don't know what's going to happen on road trips.
There's a lot of money tied up in the alternative, which is the fuel, the petrol stations, the tanker drivers, the oil tankers, the sheiks in Iran, and there's a lot of money tied up in those things, and they don't want it to change.
But going back to the original question, so does moving to hybrid and then to plug-in hybrid help on the road towards getting to EVs, or does it stop along that road somewhere because people aren't ready, or because eventually they won't get there? I mean, I think eventually they'll get there. The question is how far down that road from ICE to hybrid to plug-in hybrid to EV should people be now, I think.
So I think it comes back to price as well.
Yep.
And convenience and knowledge. So
knowledge. I think are people ready? Can they make the jump in one go?
Well, Tesla is the leader of the pack in the EV market, and what's that price drop? That's like 10%, is it, Ian Bennett? About 10% drop on those prices.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
But wasn't it follow up another recent price drop of about 10% as well?
No. So the total price drop is about 15%. Yeah, over the.
So a
But
drop
is that a reflection of they're worried about sales, they want to increase sales because the sales are dropping? Or is it reflective of the Moore's law? No, not Moore's law. What law did you say it was?
Wright's
The law you
law.
put in the chip there? Wright's
Right.
law. Is it an example of Wright's law? They're just building a shed, CHED, load, and therefore the price is coming down?
Possibly a combination.
Yeah, look,
Tesla is going through a bit of an interesting patch this quarter, but maybe they can drive their way out of it because costs have come down.
Well, when you consider that you can buy a Model Y for basically the same price as the new BYD CL6.
Yep, two different markets, but I see your point.
There's not much in it. There's not a lot in it.
Buy the Model Y.
Is that a drive-away price in New South or is it a starting that 55?
Yeah, that's not
so plus on road.
Plus on roads. Well, the other one's it's pretty close though. It's about 3,000 difference between the Seal. Well, that's the all-wheel drive CL6 too. It's about 7,000 difference between the two-wheel drive CL6, C-Line 6.
So if you take both of them in 2 years' time, the resale value, I think the Y would be, you get a lot more for the Y. Anyway, I don't want to get into that.
Quite possibly, but people don't want to buy a full EV. It's proven now that we can only get 10% of the market of people wanting to buy electric cars. So,
well, I work on the fact that sometimes this year we could get to 20%, but we're not going to get past that. I don't think in Australia this year, which means that there's 4 times as many people buying either hybrid or plug-in hybrid or petrol car because they're not yet ready to buy an EV. Now, these price movements may accelerate that figure. Maybe it'll even go past 20%. But to be honest, I don't see it going much past 20% this year.
I think what you may find is people aren't buying anything. They're waiting to see what the market will do.
There's a bit of that too. Yes, the market is low in general. That's one of the reasons why Tesla is going to have a tough quarter, is because everyone's going to have a tough quarter. The ICE car companies are going to have an even tougher quarter potentially. Well, in reality, it's just that Tesla is expected to grow.
I think a lot of that is people sitting on the fence, because people I speak to, they say, we'll see what's getting, BYD is coming out with something, and something new, like a proper EV, the C-Line 7.
But then I spoke to someone who's got an Atto 3 just today, and they were saying, I've got this trip that a Ballina, which should be a road trip, but I'm scared to do that yet. And they've owned the Atto 3 for a year.
Yeah.
They've done a trip to Canberra and back, but that's about as far as they've gone on a road trip in the Atto 3. So from Sydney to Ballina, they were worried about it.
Yeah. So if the EV companies keep on putting the prices down, they're going to drive out. They're going to drive these the plug-in hybrid sales down. I think, like, if you're going to be able to buy a Tesla for the same price as a C-Line 6 or close, or $5,000 more, that's changed the whole playing field. I think a lot of people are going to say, I'll just pay the extra $5,000 and get a Model Y.
So what's an Atto 3 cost now?
I don't know, to be honest. I mean, they were selling some for 45, but have they run out of those yet? I don't know.
Yeah. So they're on run out for 2023 models. They're still advertising it. 47,000 drive away.
47 now.
Yeah, 47. Oh, that's a drive away price, including.
So that's model 2023.
Apparently that's what they're saying, but a lot of people are getting demonstrators that haven't been registered, and they're the 24 model. So I don't really know.
It's their excuse for the price cut.
Yeah. They don't want to say that they're putting the price down like Tesla do. So maybe that's the reason behind it. But yeah, EVs are coming down. So if
Well, Tesla phoned me today to tell me to come down, and they're wearing it as a badge of honour, not something to be afraid of. They say, hey, we've been able to get the price down.
yeah, so as a
It's a question whether they're committed to holding it down. But yeah,
Oh,
I mean,
Tesla,
when a car model's price
they
goes
don't put
down,
the price up. They don't put the price up.
sorry,
No, they've never put the price up.
who, Tesla?
Yeah.
Oh, they have. They've restored them back again for little bits. They put them down and back up.
COVID was one. They
So
put the
what?
price up.
So for what?
For COVID, they put the prices up. When there's a high demand for Teslas, they put up the price. So it's just like a normal supply.
They've
and
also
demand.
dropped them and then restored them a bit too. They've moved them down and then moved them back a bit.
I don't know. The original Y rear-wheel drive, when it came out almost 2 years ago now, it was
Yeah, it was over 7.
yes, it was about 78, and now it's on the road, 66 or something, 62. So it's come down 15 grand. So
Yeah, if I type in Tesla price increase, I get lots of hits on little times where they bump them up a bit, but they don't tend to bump them up as much as they bump them down. I mean, this
correct.
55, I wouldn't count on it lasting forever, 55 for the Model Y. It might, but it may not.
yeah, maybe when the new Y comes out, the refresh Y, maybe that might go up. Then.
Yep.
Although the 3, when the refresh came out, its price didn't go up.
But should we move on to the which one do people want?
Yeah, so is the price of EVs coming down? Is that going to affect people? Are people still interested in buying hybrids, or do you think they're going to change? Do you think this is the price that they are prepared they want to buy? Or
So the question really is: are EVs coming down in price faster than hybrids and ICE cars coming down in price? Because if EVs are coming down faster, then that's going to, obviously the market will start shifting towards EV. But if the EVs are coming down in price at the same speed as the others, then that makes no difference.
yeah, in general, ICE cars don't go down in price. Only EVs do.
Well, there's your answer. As they come down, people shift.
Exactly. Yeah. So we can expect.
And what about hybrids? Are they coming down in price?
Well, they are effectively. The price, it's the same thing, that it's a newer product. It's still on that rights thing. As I said, I mean, hybrid, Toyota makes only 1/3 at the moment, and they charge quite a premium. Last year, BYD were the second in hybrids in the world. They made about 1.5 million hybrids. This year, they're targeting 2.5 million hybrids, and they're all plug-in hybrids, which traditionally have been more expensive because there's been even less of them. I mean, the direct competitor in some respects, the two direct competitors on the Australian market of the same size vehicle as the C-Line 6 would be the Mazda. There's a Mazda, I forget the number, plug-in hybrid that's about $85,000, and there's the equivalent spec Mitsubishi, with a plug-in hybrid, which is also about $85,000 for the equivalent spec. So that's a big drop from $85,000 to $55,000 fully on the road for a vehicle, and people were buying some of those plug-in hybrids at that price, despite the fact that they were already dearer than Model Y.
Because we know BYD want to increase sales dramatically in Australia, so they really have to be very sharp priced. And with
I mean,
Tesla,
they're also at a volume point in plug-in hybrids that no one else is. I mean, they stopped making regular ICE vehicles and regular hybrids in 2022, and why did they stop? A lot of people say it's because they got to the point where they were cheap. It was cheaper for them to make the plug-in hybrids.
Yeah.
There's not much point making the old ones when you can't make them any cheaper, and they've got lower specs.
Yeah.
I mean, all those, I mean, one of the things that you get with the hybrid versus the plug-in hybrid is that you can only do a certain amount of power with those cost-effective drivetrains from the ICE engine. So the only way to get more power is to ramp up the electric part. And if you ramp up the electric part and don't increase the battery size, it just can't keep driving.
Mm.
So, I mean, you've got BYD that has the BAL 5, which has just got a 1.5 litre petrol engine, but it puts out 505 kilowatts of power overall. And you've got the U8, which is this big, huge Land Cruiser size heavy vehicle with just a 2 litre petrol engine, but it can put out 880 kilowatts of power because it's driven by its electric motors. So, you've got to have a battery to do that, a decent sized battery, not a 1.8 kilowatt one. That doesn't do it, which is one of the reasons Toyota is looking at even using the BYD DMI technology in China on various reports you can find.
So I think we can summarize tonight's little answer as car manufacturers are moving away from ICE vehicles because they can make plug-in hybrids for a similar price or cheaper. So we can expect to see less ICE cars on the road, more hybrids on the road, and EVs are coming down in price. So we can expect EVs to take a bigger market share of the overall car market. So,
yeah, I mean, not all the manufacturers are ready to move that fast, but I think that you'll almost see almost every ICE car is at least what they call a mild hybrid. There'll be nothing that's not a mild hybrid very soon. And then you'll see, more and more hybrids, and you'll just see an increase in the plug-in hybrids. But a lot of the plug-in hybrids are going to come first from some of the Chinese brands. But you've got others. I mean, Mazda moving with a plug-in hybrid. Toyota's got the RAV4 plug-in hybrid.
So do you want to
get to Australia?
So when do you think that manufacturers will stop making full ICE cars? When's that going to happen? There's quite a few rules and regulations about when they have to stop. But what's your opinion, Ian Ogilvy?
Well, one of the things is when you release a car, it takes a long time to recoup the cost that went into designing that model. The industry sort of has a standard that everyone works to of about 7 years that you keep the same model running. And as long as everyone follows the same pattern, they're all competing with each other. If you try and recoup the costs quicker, it's really hard. So almost every car from its first launch goes to a mid-cycle update in about 3.5 years and stays on the market for around about 7. So, you can't swap the whole fleet over in less than 7 years, no matter what happens.
So 2030 is probably going to be the end of ICE cars then, I guess. I think there's some mandates for 2035, isn't there? So 2030, they'll probably stop manufacturing ICE cars.
Stop releasing new models by 2028 if you're going to hit the 2035 deadline, or you're going to cop a loss on those last few releases.
Right, so that's only 4 years away then. So 4 years is probably we don't know for sure, but we assume that's going to be when manufacturers will stop making ICE cars.
It also depends on the culture wars and all these other factors that are hard to read.
Yeah, plenty.
I mean, Volvo's stopping with gasoline cars and going pure EV in Australia from 2026.
Yep. So 2026, 2028.
That's not the end of the new models. That's the end of the current models. They've already ended. There's no new ICE cars coming out.
Yep. All right. Well, that's quite a long discussion. So we'll end this one here. And Ian Bennett, have you got anything else to say? How do you feel about ICE cars finishing in 2030? Happy to see that, or?
So, my own view, it doesn't really worry me when they end. I mean, they could never end for all I care. If people want them, I don't see the driver of the climate change and all that, I don't see that. If people want to buy ice cars, let them buy ice cars. I think that ice cars aren't going to be made after 2028 because EVs are much better. So I would say they're going to stop making ice cars when people stop buying them.
Yeah.
And people are going to stop buying them when they're confident to go to an EV or confident to go to a hybrid, and that depends on the marketing, the education of the public. So
well, EVs are just going to keep pushing the prices lower. So there's going to be they're just going to
keep pushing the prices lower, but the big problem is the ability of people to charge at home. Anyone who can charge at home, the EV makes perfect sense. But there are people who just can't charge at home, and then it starts to be less attractive.
True. Yeah.
I mean, people who can charge at home in Australia, a lot of them can even do it from solar power. It's got to be so compelling. But at the other end of the extreme, you've got people who have to park on the street or park in an apartment complex, and there are rules that make it difficult to get to charge in the apartment complex.
Oh, yes.
I think the government's going to fix that up too. I think the government's going to start addressing that.
They've got to start addressing the whole thing. I mean, realistically, there's a few things that it takes government to do, and it's if enough people are moving to electric cars and electric cars get cheap enough, it'll create the pressure on the government to do it. But at the moment, they're just going with who pays the donations.
So I've heard something about charging in apartment blocks or underground car parking. Is it true? There's the law. The government's changed the law to make it that you can't charge in an underground car park unless there's a sprinkler system.
It's not that the government changed the law, but it's some authority brought in this rule.
Yeah.
New South Wales and Queensland.
Hasn't come into Queensland.
Has, in last month.
Is this for new buildings, is it?
It's for installing chargers now. Now, it's a compliance with fire and rescue and things, but it's like you technically don't have that compliance. Now, people might break the compliance, but it's only come in the past few weeks, and there's a bit of an outcry about it because one of the relevant authorities says, but petrol cars have 20 times more fires. What are we doing? But then, it was brought in with no research, no background, scaremonger campaign, and there is some money behind some of the scaremonger campaigns. So the petrol car industry, overall, the legacy manufacturers, there was a paper on how they're all working to just push back the date to switch to EVs as late as they can. Because at the moment, legacy manufacturers make far more petrol cars than they make EVs, so they make more profit on petrol cars.
So
I'm just going to end this one.
Don't end it. This is the most critical thing of EV. If they start saying you have a sprinkler system in a building, in a car park, if you're going to have it, they're going to start saying you have to have it in a house, and they're going to stop EVs dead. So, Ian, you seem to know all about this. I don't know anything about it. Is this a state government thing or a local government thing, or is it an Australian standard thing?
It's an authority thing. I'll get more information, and Chris can put a link to it in the video. But it was actually from fire and rescue that it came in. And there's a requirement for compliance with what fire and rescue requires in public areas. So it's in shared areas. It doesn't apply. There is not the need for that compliance in houses, in private houses, but there is in what are called basically public spaces, and a apartment complex car park qualifies as a public space.
Well, that puts the end of these.
But
if this sticks, I don't know that it'll stick, but it's the sort of thing that's going on that delays things. I mean, if it sticks, they'd have to, what happens to the ones in shopping centres?
Oh, that was in 2012. That came into and it never took off.
I'll just pause it here, and we'll get some evidence, and we'll get back. We'll come back. End of tonight's discussion on the future of the hybrids and some more news about EVs coming down in price. So it's going to be interesting times, but there's only going to be hybrids and EVs, it appears. So let's hope there's going to be more EVs than hybrids, and the price of EVs come down, and as EV owners, we'll be much happier. So,
well, if there's plug-in hybrids, people can learn how to charge and overcome their fear.
Yeah.
It is 5 years before they buy the next car.
Yeah. So that's all right. We'll just sign off now. See you in the next video, guys.
Okay.
Okay. See you in the next live.